Hi everyone, I'm Beth Kincade. Only 2 weeks into the college football season and already many questions need to be answered. Will the Gators put Lane Kiffin and the Vols in their place? Can the Rebels get back to playing fundamental football? This is Sports Whip.
Welcome to the Sports Whip. I'm Kory Keys, and we're going to take you around the SEC, giving you in-depth analysis and information. As always, I'm joined by Jason Smith and Dom Rodriguez. Guys, thanks for coming back this week after a somewhat awkward second week, but we're ready to roll here in week 3. One game we want to recap right off the bat is the Georgia-South Carolina matchup last weekend, which took place in Athens between the hedges at Sanford Stadium. One guy I was impressed with this week as opposed to week 1 when South Carolina took on NC State is that South Carolina quarterback Stephen Garcia.
Well, it's finally nice to see Garcia live up to the hype. He attempted 53 passes, 313 yards, but the Georgia secondary was just, they underperformed in that game. They were very undisciplined. There's no help over the top with the safeties, and the corners were very easily burned by the South Carolina wideouts.
Well, the Georgia defense might not have looked so great. The special teams was on. Brandon Boykin had 4 returns, 182 yards. One of those went for a touchdown. So I think that was a big factor in that win.
Well, and see, what does this game say about Georgia overall? Because week 1, they were going up against Oklahoma State, 2, nationally ranked teams everybody's talking about. Oklahoma State puts up a bunch of points, which people expected to do, and then they get the W, and then Oklahoma State gets upset by Houston. Georgia barely gets by South Carolina in a game that arguably South Carolina could have won. What does it say about Georgia?
I think you got to look at Mark Richt. South Carolina only put up 7 points against NC State, who got some hype going into the season, but they don't look like they're anything to be worried about. So I think you need to look at Mark Richt and how he's preparing the team.
Now we'll go ahead and we'll look at the games coming up this week in the SEC, specifically this weekend. Mississippi State and Vanderbilt. This is a game with 2 teams who don't have a lot of expectations in the season in 2009. So there's a lot going on, especially with Dan Mullen and Bobby Johnson this year. Vanderbilt had a chance to beat LSU last week. They were down 16-9 late in the game. LSU ended up surviving 23-9. But now you've got Mississippi State, Chris Rell running the offense. Is it Tyson Lee? What's going to happen this week, Jason?
I think Vandy's defense is going to prove its legitimacy this weekend. Mississippi State's offense is struggled all season long. I mean, they put up some points against Auburn, but it was a blowout.
Right.
So
I think Mississippi State has a chance to take this one. Their defense, even though the Vandy's defense was good last week, they had a lot of penalties. Their starting right tackle, James Williams, is out, and they had a lot of drop balls too. That was one of the big things that caused them to not perform well in the LSU game.
Right, and we have to look at this as State. They did play their first SEC game already, and that was against Auburn. And that game really was never in question. Auburn had that from the get-go, and that's a good way for Gene Chizik to start things off. The next game we're going to look at is the Arkansas Razorbacks and Georgia Bulldogs, which I believe is taking place in Fayetteville, Arkansas at Razorback Stadium, which is what a lot of people, Tony Barnhart of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, is calling that a classic trap game for Georgia. I don't know necessarily that it's a trap game because I think Arkansas is a decent football team. I think calling that a trap game is almost insulting to Arkansas. But this will be the first time we see what Ryan Mallett is made of. He's had 1 game since transferring from Michigan. That was against Missouri State. Not much to see there. Now he gets to go up against an SEC defense.
There's one thing Georgia struggled with this year. It's been the passing game. And that's all Arkansas will do with Ryan Mallett at quarterback. They're going to want to prove that he is ready to contend in the SEC.
Right.
So Georgia's defense has to be ready for that. And I think if this is a trap game for anybody, it should be for Arkansas because I think they should go and beat Georgia.
Like I said before, Georgia's special teams looked really good last week against SC. So that could be the deciding factor, just like it was at Georgia, South Carolina.
And right now, I'm going to give Arkansas the slight edge simply because Georgia lost an offensive lineman for the season already. They're already a man down there on an offensive line that's been thin the past few seasons. So they've got a lot to prove. Actually, both teams have a lot to prove. Whoever wins that game could be ready for, a 7-5 type season, maybe 8-4 type year, but you never know in the SEC.
Arkansas put up 591 yards. Granted, it was against Missouri State, but if you go back to last week's game, the defense allowed South Carolina to have over 427 yards of total offense. So it could be another long day for the Bulldogs defense.
And another game in the SEC, and this is the one everybody's talking about and the one that everybody's circled on their calendars. The Florida Gators host Lane Kiffin and the Tennessee Volunteers. Now, we all know that in the offseason, Lane Kiffin, he talked in the offseason about recruiting violations. You know how Urban Meyer was calling some of Tennessee's recruits when they were on campus in Knoxville and how that's illegal. Well, come to find out, Urban Meyer wasn't doing that. And Lane Kiffin committed recruiting violation after recruiting violation every time he opened his mouth. So this is the time where Florida, if they get a chance to hang a number on him, do you think Urban Meyer might do it?
Urban Meyer is going all out for this game. He's not going to take that from Lane Kiffin, the new guy in the SEC, coming out and calling Florida on recruiting violations when Tennessee probably led the nation in secondary violations.
Oh, absolutely.
Year. So I think Florida comes out with vengeance, and they're going to hang 50 on him, no problem.
I agree. I think if the way Crompton played last week, he threw 3 picks. He was 13 to 26 for 93 yards. I think the Florida secondary is going to be licking their chops and getting a lot of picks.
And believe it or not, the more I see Jonathan Crompton play, the more respect I gain for Phil Fulmer, and that this is what this guy had to deal with. And it ultimately led to his demise because there wasn't a quarterback that had been recruited. Now Lane Kiffin gets it. And really, now we see that Phil Fulmer didn't really have a lot of cards in the deck to play with when in those last couple of years in Knoxville.
Crompton is easily the most inept quarterback in the SEC right now, and might have Tennessee fans wishing they still had Brent Schaefer.
Absolutely. You could sit there and argue Tennessee, Mississippi State, but right now I'm giving the ineptitude to Tennessee. The game everybody's talking about, the game everybody's thinking about is the home opener for our Ole Miss Rebels this weekend against the Southeastern Louisiana Lions of the Southland Conference, taking on power such as the McNeese State Cowboys, amongst others. But really, we're not going to analyze this one too much. What do you expect?
I just want Ole Miss to go out there, execute their game plan, look crisp on offense, and not struggle like we did against Memphis. And hopefully, we don't have to see too much of Jevin Sneed, and the defense can get some rest.
Better offensive line play. If you look at the game 2 weeks ago against Memphis, there was a lot of missed assignments, just sloppiness up front, and that is the key to your offense. You have to have solid offensive line play. I want to see Sneed play 4 quarters of football, not just 2. And when I say that, I don't mean the whole game, but I want him to come out from the get-go and passes are on target, reading, doing what he has to do, like he should. And
there are reports out that Greg Hardy's not going to play, Gerald Harris might not play. That's a good thing in my mind. If there's anybody even in question for this game, they don't need to suit up. To be honest with you, if Jevin Sneed plays 2 quarters, that'll be perfect. I want to see a lot of Nathan Stanley. I want to see him actually get a chance to throw the ball outside of getting sacked for a loss of something like 13 before handing off to Enrique Davis for that last touchdown against Memphis. So I want to see a lot of the backups get some experience because this is what's going to build depth for the future. If guys leave, if Jevin Sneed's gone, Nathan Stanley's the heir apparent at quarterback, we don't know who else is going to step up there. So this is the type of game that's really going to build depth for Ole Miss overall.
Especially at the running back position. Brandon Bolden seems to have the position locked down until he leaves. But Cordero's backup right now, he's a senior. And then you got Enrique Davis, who looked impressive in the Memphis game, and guys like Devin Thomas and Tim Simon, who have been getting a lot of hype from practices. So we want to see how they do as well.
I'm going to play a little over-under with you guys. You guys ready to go with this?
Let's do it.
We'll give it a first try. I'm going to go over-under 4 sacks. Go.
I'm going to go over. I was going to say even, but I think Emmanuel Stevens gets one, and I'm going to say Lamarcus Moore gets one, and then the rest will just be spread out. I'm going to give some love for Lamar.
I'm going to say over too. I don't think that they're Southeastern Louisiana can handle the Ole Miss defense.
And this is a Southeastern Louisiana offense which throws the ball upwards of, I don't know, what did they throw last time?
Over 60 passes.
Over 60 passes in their last game against Union University. So this is, the type of offense they're going to throw the ball, and you would think their offensive line would not be up to par for an SEC defensive line, especially one of the better defensive lines in the country. And our next over-under category, 50 points. Does Ole Miss score 50 points over-under?
I think over. I think we could put up at least 55, 56.
Oh, okay. So we're going to go out on a limb here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with under. I think we're going to see a lot of running from this time in this game. They'll be passing early on because you want to see how Bradley Sowell does protecting Jevin and also Reshaw. But I'm going to go with under.
That about wraps it up for us.
Be sure to catch me and the boys next week as they continue their season-long review of SEC football next week only on thedmonline.com.